Hello and welcome to Always Bored, Never Boring. Recently on the channel I unboxed and reviewed the brand new starter set for the wonderfully whimsical tabletop skirmish game Moonstone by Goblin King Games. Subsequently, I made a video taking a deep dive into the dead cool Shades of Moonreach characters from that starter set. Now it's time to turn a hunting light on the Fauns of the Leshavult. Is this faction the GOAT? Right, with the dad jokes well and truly out of my system, let's get into it. As with every faction in the Moonstone game, the Leshavult comprises several sub-factions: Fauns, Woodland Spirits and Cultists. You are free to mix and match those sub-factions as you wish, but for the most visually and thematically cohesive force, you may want to start out collecting just one type. Personally, I like mixing factions when I have come up with a narrative to support it. Imagine, for example, Dranya the Woodland Spirit is being hunted by goblins. She escapes into the deep woods, where Fauns orchestrate an ambush to rescue her. The newest starter set for the game, A Life and Death Struggle, gets you on your way with a Faun-flavoured force, with 3 Fauns representing the best of their military might, plus 1 large animal companion, the Jackalope. Interestingly, all of these units are dual faction. They can be used in a Leshavult or Commonwealth team. That adds a little extra value to this starter set, as you can pivot away from the Leshavult if you want to go with a Commonwealth team instead. As an added bonus, Angerboda of the Shades can also ally with the Commonwealth, meaning you have almost a full team of 6 Commonwealth characters right out of the box. While you don't get leaders as such in Moonstone, I always like to pick one character to be the boss, and in this faction I would have to go with Hoff, a brave fighter who leads from the front. This is a lovely miniature, probably my favourite of the Fauns. He has a strong pose with a good sense of motion, following a through line running diagonally up to the horn. This miniature is far less comical than a lot of the other Moonstone miniatures, and that in itself amuses me. He's a very serious dude in a very silly world. Hoff is definitely bringing the muscle. He has the keywords Faun and Soldier, and his stats are Melee 4 with a 2-inch range, Arcane 4 and Evade 0. He has 9 health points and generates 3 energy as standard. He is armed with the mighty felling axe, which grants +2 damage on impact attacks. Unfortunately, it also reduces damage from piercing attacks to null, basically an unmodifiable score of 0, a complete whiff. The reason I see him as the leader is because of his guerrilla tactics. Other friendly Fauns within 6 inches of Hoff gain +1 melee, and gain the Swift ability that lets them move 2 inches instead of 1 inch once per turn when making a reaction step. Do note that important word, other. That means Hoff does not benefit from these buffs himself, he only grants them to his nearby Faun friends. Hoff has a more direct way to interact with the foe, thanks to his Furious Charge, which costs 1 energy. He selects a target within 4 inches and then moves 3 inches towards it. If his next action this turn is a melee attack, he deals +1 damage. If he can follow up his charge with a falling swing, which does impact damage, he could cause up to 6 wounds with a single strike, and that's without even factoring in critical hits. Absolutely brutal. Finally, once per turn, Hoff can sound his hunting horn for 1 energy, as long as he isn't engaged. When he does this, he targets a friendly Faun within 8 inches, and if he plays a red arcane card, that Faun moves X +1 inches, where X is the value of the card. On a catastrophe, the target is moved 3 inches by the opposing player instead. This is another ability that cements Hoff's role as the leader. I see him taking a central position in the battle line, where he can buff his allies with guerrilla tactics, drive them forwards with his hunting horn, or charge into battle leading by example. His signature move is an upgrade to Falling Swing, the Headbutt. This attack is more consistent than Falling Swing, with a higher chance of making contact, but the improved odds of hitting are offset by a reduced damage output of just a single wound and a necessity to be no further than 1 inch from the foe, neutralising the benefit of Hoff's impressive 2-inch melee range. Fortunately, that single wound will be boosted by the felling axe and will also benefit from Furious Charge, so could still inflict 4 wounds, making the trade-off worthwhile. Additionally, it has an end step ability that will drive the enemy model 1 inch away, which could free up Hoff to move, sound his hunting horn, or even wind up a Furious Charge to really batter his opponent. While Hoff drives his team forward from the front, Our second Fawn soldier, Jayda, is a quick-witted hit-and-run expert who can also provide withering support fire at range. She is fast, agile and keen-sighted, and you can get all that from a quick read of her stunning miniature. Look at that pose, the sense of grace and fluid motion, the billowing hair, the high raised hoof suggesting an energetic leap out of harm's way, all while firing the bow behind her, emphasizing that idea of a character who snipes at foes while retreating to a safe distance. It's absolutely fantastic. Jayda's stats are melee 4, range 1, arcane 4, evade -1. That negative evade modifier is great because it's going to make it harder to hit her with arcane abilities, which is likely to be the primary way enemies try to engage with her. She has 7 health and generates an impressive 4 energy as standard. As a side note, something I don't really talk about much in my Moonstone videos is the placement of the blue energy dots on a character's health bar. It's actually very important. If you look at Hoff's health bar, you can see that he has to take 4 damage before the wounds have an impact on his ability to generate energy. He's a tough old goat. Conversely, the more fragile Jayda only has to take 2 damage to start producing less energy, but of course that weakness is offset by her ability to produce 4 energy per turn as standard, as opposed to Hoff's 3. Looking at Jayda's passive abilities, she has a dagger for up close encounters. This grants her +1 damage when making piercing attacks. She is swift, which means once per turn she can move 2 inches instead of 1 inch when making a reaction step, the same ability granted by Hoff's guerrilla tactics. And she is sure-footed, which means she can jog through water features and wooded patches, and pays 1 less energy to traverse obstacles. She is incredibly good at staying out of an opponent's reach. Something important she brings to the party is an excellent 10-inch ranged attack called Shoot Bow. It costs 3 energy and cannot be used while she is engaged, but it can be used multiple times if you can grant her some extra energy, which is where our friend Mr. Toodles will come into play. When using Shoot Bow, if Jayda plays a green card, she inflicts damage equal to the value of the card +1. The big risk is, on a catastrophe, the bow breaks and can't be used for the remainder of the game. That really impacts on Jayda's usefulness. Jayda is a hunter by nature, and her signature move reflects the hunter's mindset. It's a mercy kill. It converts a falling swing to piercing damage for that important +1 damage boost from her dagger, and then adds another 2 damage if the target has 4 wounds or less remaining. It's a devastating finishing move for more powerful targets that have been picking up chip damage throughout the game. And then, to add insult to injury, if she kills her target with mercy kill, she gains 1 energy, which may help her to subsequently perform a reaction step to avoid retaliation. Our final fawn isn't a soldier, he's a cleric. It's Mr. Toodles, who has skipped straight out of Narnia. This is my least favourite sculpt in the set, but it's by no means a bad one. It's just up against some stiff competition. The prancing pose is still rather lovely, and you get a real sense for Toodles' personality. And it highlights something that I really enjoy about Moonstone miniatures in general. They often make it clear what kind of character you are dealing with. Hoff looks like a brawler, Jayda reads as a fleet-footed assassin, Mr. Toodles is clearly not a fighter. It really adds to the game in an important way, as well as emphasising that these are individuals. There are no rank and file disposable nameless units. Every character is exactly that, a character. Toodles' stats are melee 2, range 1 inch, arcane 5 and evade 0. He has 7 wounds and generates 3 energy as standard. He is a weakling, letting down the side, which means all his melee damage is reduced by 1 and it costs him 1 extra energy to harvest moonstones. But he isn't here to fight, he's here to play sweet goblin jazz funk solos. No, really. Once per turn for the cost of 1 energy, he can move all models within a 2-inch range 1 inch directly away. This can push allies into battle, or drive away foes who might be thinking they can pick on the little guy. Where Mr. Toodles really excels is in his range of arcane abilities. He has a simple healing ability for 2 energy, which targets one character up to 8 inches away. If he plays a blue card, the target recovers X plus 1 wound, where X is the value of the card. On a catastrophe, the target loses 2 wounds. I can see that being important for keeping Hoff in peak condition. He also has a lullaby, which costs 1 energy and targets a model within 6 inches. On a blue 2 or red 2 card, the target model must discard half its energy rounding up, but then also restores 2 wounds. This ability can potentially devastate an opponent's plans, but it can only be used once per turn, and it has a fairly high chance of failure. And, on a catastrophe, Toodles loses 2 wounds. Finally, Toodles has a blighted elixir, which can also only be used once per turn. It costs 1 energy and targets a model within 2 inches. This is a really versatile ability that can be used for a variety of purposes. When played with a green card, the target moves directly away a number of inches equal to the card's value. If played with a blue card, the target gains energy equal to the value of the card minus 1, and if played with a red card, the target suffers wounds equal to the value of the card. On a catastrophe, Toodles suffers 2 wounds. Blighted Elixir is great. It can be used to give an ally up to 2 energy, which would be enough for Jayda to fire her bow twice in a turn, or for Hoff to set up some more devastating attacks. It can be used to move a target away from Toodles or to protect a Moonstone, or it can be used to inflict direct damage on an opponent. When an ability says it inflicts wounds rather than damage, that means the inflicted damage cannot be modified. That makes this ability a good way to bypass the defences of heavily armoured opponents, but at the risk of putting Toodles in a dangerous position. And yes, Toodles really doesn't want to get into melee, so his signature move is Panic and Flee. It upgrades a low guard, so it's not going to do any damage, but in the end step, Toodles can move 3 inches away from the enemy. He does, however, have to discard all of his energy. The last member of our team is the big guy, the Jackalope. What a wonderful chunk of resin and a lovely imagining of this mythical creature. I love the fact he's sort of cute, but sort of not. There is an unnatural menace about him. Just great stuff. And he's certainly a useful member of the team, as he is fast and robust, able to run interference or quickly gather Moonstones. His stats are Melee 3, Range 2 inches, Arcane 0 and Evade +1. He has 10 wounds and generates 3 energy as standard. His razor sharp antlers inflict an additional 2 piercing damage in melee, and his fluffy fur reduces impact damage by 1. So, combined with his long reach and high wounds total, he can look after himself in a fight. He's nippy too, as he has the Hippity ability that lets him move freely over intervening obstacles and models during jog actions. And, in addition to making a regular jog action in his turn, he can perform a hop for 2 energy once per turn, which is a move of 4 inches ignoring obstacles and models. That lets him cover up to 8 inches of ground in a single turn, allowing him to quickly plug holes in your defences, or, more importantly, get into enemy territory to harvest Moonstones, which he is very good at, as he has the burrowing claws that let him reduce the depth value of a Moonstone by 2 instead of 1 the first time each turn that he performs the harvest action. For his signature move, he can upgrade a rising attack to a Gore. It does more consistent damage with no chance of a whiff unless you are at a range greater than 1 inch, and in the end step it lets you move the enemy model 1 inch. That is our team. It's really good. Very fast, very mobile, hits hard and has some good support abilities thanks to Toodles. Your biggest risks are probably being caught too spread out. If Hoff charges ahead, or the Jackalope delves too deeply in enemy territory, or Toodles gets caught out of position, you could end up in serious trouble. Overall though, a good, well-rounded force that is quite straightforward, making it a good starting team for new players. And do note, if you like the look of these characters but you aren't interested in buying the starter set, don't worry. All of these characters are available as separate purchases. The Jackalope is a large single character pack retailing for £21, while the 3 Fauns are available as the Hunting Horns pack for £26. But the big question is, how would you expand this force to a full 6 character troupe? I think there are some obvious choices. Boris the Bunny Summoner is a good place to start, not least because he can summon bunny rabbits to fight for him. I would consider Boris as he is a faun, so will benefit from Hoff's abilities. He can generate massive amounts of energy, and importantly, if he can generate 5 energy, he can summon a Jackalope into play. That means you don't have to include the Jackalope in your starting lineup, freeing up a slot for another character. To fill out the team, I would look at the Wild Things box. All 3 of the characters in that box are Fauns, so they are thematically tied to your existing characters, and they will benefit from Hoff's leadership. You have the wizard Gloom, who can use his Whisper of the Wild Things to move any animal up to 3 inches, making your Jackalope and Murder Bunnies even faster. And you have Chubs, who can grant fawns and animals 2 energy while also restoring 1 wound, making it easier for Boris to get a Jackalope into play early, or enabling Jayda to get off more shots with her bow. You also get a Wendigo if you feel like creeping out your opponent. But those are just my thoughts. I am by no means a Moonstone expert, and more often than not I throw together characters just because it's fun, or I like the models or the ideas behind them. And that, really, is as good a way as any to collect your troop, if you ask me. And that is all I have to say about that. Thank you to Goblin King Games for providing this starter set for review, and thank you for watching. If you like this video, please consider pressing the like button. If you really like this video, please consider subscribing if you don't already do so, and hopefully I will see you all again very soon. Bye bye everyone, bye bye.